Today I'm talking with Sam Paganelli. Sam is a former UT student. So you were at UT just a few years ago. I know you graduated with an accounting degree, and then you spent a bit of time at TVA, and now you've settled into a new role at Rather and Kittrell, and you're a financial advisor or an associate advisor. I can't remember your exact title, but
Yeah,
we'll learn
yeah,
a little
that's
bit more
close
about
enough.
what all that means here in just a minute. But
Mhm.
thanks for your time today, Sam. It's really been great talking to you lately and getting to know you. So welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be here. I love doing things like this, so I was happy to get the invite.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's. I want you to talk just briefly about your journey from UT through TBA to where you are now. Tell us a little bit
Yeah,
about that.
yeah. So it's not the typical journey to kind of where I'm at now. So I'm originally from Maryville, Tennessee. Grew up, went to Maryville High School, and decided to go to UT. Both my parents work at UT, so that really wasn't a tough decision for me. Um, so I have an accounting degree, and I kind of chose accounting because both my parents are accountants. My wife now is an accountant, so I'm kind of been around accountants quite a bit. But I
I
was
bet
always
you'll have
told
some interesting conversations at family get-togethers.
it's absolutely electric. Debits and credits, and you name it. No, we don't actually talk
Just
about
make sure
accounting.
you get the correct one on the correct side.
Yeah, people always want to talk about tax and whatnot, but you know, work stays at work for the most part. But uh,
Yeah.
kind of the reason I chose accounting was because my parents were always like, "You need to have a job when you get out of school," and you know, I kind of figured accounting would be a good route. It had worked out for them, so that was kind of my logic in selecting it. But as you kind of see now, that's not the route that I took. So there was a kind of a couple stops along the way. My first real professional experience was with a program called the GLS, the Global Leadership Scholars Program. So I worked in the accounts receivable department at a Holiday Inn in London, England, for my first job ever, really. So that was kind of you had to grow up quick when you're in one of the
Yeah.
biggest cities in the world and you have a adult commute and an adult job as a sophomore in college. So that was quite a learning experience. And so that's really where I got the first taste of corporate America or corporate world and accounting. And it was all right. I really realized that I liked meeting people, like talking to people more so than spreadsheets. But while I was in London, I had a phone interview with TVA for an internship for when I got back to the States. And it's a funny story. The phone actually cut off during my interview. So luckily I still got the job. But long story short, ended up working in TVA's treasury department as a credit analyst, which I didn't really know what I was getting into. I was just kind of super excited to have a job.
Yeah.
Um, so I can talk a little bit about what a credit analyst
Yes. Yeah.
does.
What is a credit analyst, and what's the 30-second or 1 minute version of
Mhm.
what a credit analyst is?
Yeah. So credit analyst job is to review companies' financial statements to determine if they will be able to pay somebody back. And in my case, it gets a little complicated, but it was about TVA had economic incentive programs where they would basically give companies money up front based off projections. And if a company didn't meet those projections, they would have to pay TVA back. So my job was to make sure they could pay TVA back. And so you can learn a ton, especially because the companies had to send me their financial statements. So my
Yeah.
job was to open up these financial statements and run an analysis, which
Hmm.
that's an invaluable skill. I feel like I can open up really any public company's financial statements and have a general idea of what's going on with the company because
Well,
my
and I think
portfolio.
being yeah, and with your training in accounting, I mean, this is I think most people would call this more of a finance job, but
Mhm.
it's certainly very intertwined with accounting. I mean, we always talk about accounting being the language of finance, and so you're
Yeah.
sort of using that language, but then you're making decisions on essentially on behalf of TVA or helping TVA make decisions.
Absolutely. And when you get into the notes of companies' financial statements, a lot of the notes are about accounting standards and policies that have changed. So really helpful in that regard in understanding the
Yeah.
financial statements. But when if you bring up accounting, a lot of times to a lot of finance professionals, their eyes really do glaze over, and a lot of finance professionals, I don't know, they weren't super interested in the accounting part of it, but it's necessary, and they do have to talk about it. So that's a good point. And the other part of that job was you had to communicate your decision to the company. If they were not creditworthy, you had to get on the phone and tell them. So that was tough at first, but looking back on it, that is a great skill to be able to communicate in a professional setting, tough news, and kind of learning the art. You don't want to make anybody mad. So great experience right out of the gate. And most importantly, when I was making the decision, so I did intern at TVA, and then I came on full time after college. Same job, same everything. I just had insurance and a 401k. And in that time, kind of while I was interning, I was still maybe public accounting, maybe corporate finance at TVA. And ultimately I had kind of caught what I call the finance bug. So I had gotten super passionate about personal finance, investing. I was on the TVA fund. It's no longer there, but at UT. So I was, investing, learning about all the aspects of finance during that time. And I had my boss at TVA. He really became a mentor to me, and he kind of took me under his wing, if you will. And he taught me the basics of personal finance, how to diversify a portfolio, taxability of different accounts. And that is helpful when you're coming onto your job for the first time and signing up for your benefits. That can feel pretty overwhelming as somebody who is coming out of college, because I thought I knew a lot about finance coming out of college, but there's insurance. What do I do? How's this going to change when I have kids? So many different things going on there. My boss was a mentor to me, and that really kind of sparked my passion for personal finance specifically. And he's kind of the reason I decided to go work at TVA. So to any students watching this, a good mentor can go a long way. That really made a big difference in my life. So he's great.
Well, and so on the personal, I think it's interesting that so we'll get into this in a minute, but now you're into basically an advising job at the personal level, but it's not as if this is completely disjoint from what you're doing as a credit analyst with TVA, right? I mean, you're looking at companies' overall health, and you're thinking in terms of inflows and outflows and assets and debt and all of those things. And so at least conceptually, you're taking a lot of that and shifting it over to just a personal box, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. You are looking at the financial health of a company, and we're looking at people's personal financial health. One thing you didn't have to deal with, you didn't run into with the company side of things, is how emotional behavioral finance really. So that's been a learning curve on this side of things. Being with Rather and Kittrell, it's people's money. You work hard for it. People get emotional. So it's been fun to see that aspect of things. But yeah, you're right. It is similar, but there are quite a few differences to where, it's certainly not identical. Right.
Yeah. And I think there's a huge need for what you're doing right now, right? I mean, everybody on the planet has personal finances in some way, shape, or form. And many people, I would say most people, want someone to simply talk to about these things to sort of help them along.
Yeah. And it's so funny when you're in finance, people all the time would just text me questions, personal finance questions, because, you're just in finance. It's somebody who's like an accountant. They're like, oh, can you help me with my taxes? And it's funny to me. I wanted to be that person, but I wasn't able to do that yet because I didn't fully know all the ins and outs of everything. So I started working to get into a position and a job where I was a personal financial planner because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be the person to help those questions. And to your point, it's spot on. It's something everybody needs to a varying degree. Some people can be the smartest in the world, but everybody has personal finance in their lives, and it's important. And I think that there's a lot of companies and a lot of players in the industry, and a lot of the companies can kind of get a bad rap or can kind of make people have their guard up. But I think that Rather and Kittrell, the firm that I work at now, I think they do a great job of just genuinely wanting to help people. I think that's what it's all about, honestly. And that's what it is about for people at my
Yeah.
firm.
And what have you been there about 4 months now? Is that about right?
Mm-hmm. 4
Okay.
months. It's been
So,
great.
but I know in that I think even before that started, just chatting with you and also chatting with folks I know that in your company, there seemed to be very much a fit for you, not just in sort of this line of work, but there in particular, sort of the business model and the way they do things, and so. I'd like for you to talk just a little bit about, we talk about fit a lot in conversations with students and how that's so important. Can you talk a little bit about why in particular you see that fit in your current situation?
Yeah. So I genuinely just wanted to use my education and my background to help people with their personal finances, because it can really, if you don't have a professional or you don't understand what you're doing, it can really feel like you're stumbling around in the dark, and it doesn't have to feel like that. So being somebody who could be a kind of a guiding light to other people in the space is really what I wanted to do. And when I started interviewing around and looking at different firms, I saw that in Rather and Kittrell. And the people here genuinely just want to help people. There's no sales, there's no any kind of that other stuff. It's just genuinely helping people with their money. And the industry there's a wide range of different players in the space, and there's some really good ones and there's some not so good ones, but the really good ones genuinely just want to help people. And I can touch on kind of the business model if you want.
Yeah. So about the business model in particular, I know there's a number of ways this type of service can be set up with contracts, incentives, and mechanisms and all that. So what is it about the business model that you like and that you think really sort of aligns your interests with your clients?
Yeah, I think that the general public generally doesn't know kind of the best way to go about wealth management. So especially, or in my case, I interviewed the firms that I was looking at as if I was a client. And if someone's going to manage my money, I want to know two things. Number one, are you a fiduciary? And number two, how are you getting paid? So a fiduciary, that's a fancy word. All that really means is that the company has a legal obligation to put the client first. Everything they do has to be in the client's best interest. So if they sell you something you don't need, or they put you in a position you shouldn't be, too much risk, whatever it is, the client can sue you. If somebody is not a fiduciary, typically they will have an obligation to the firm first, make the firm money type of thing. So that's first and foremost. Second is, how does the firm get paid? So if someone's managing my money, I would like for them to be paid based off a fee of my assets. And the logic there is you want the company's and the client's interests to be aligned. So if the company's making money, or as the client makes money, the company will make money. The client's account value goes down, the amount of money that the company makes will go down as well. And that's instead of a commission-based structure where the incentive there is to sell people stuff or consistently get more money from the clients into whatever investment vehicles or whatever the product may be at the time. And I've seen a lot of different products.
And I think we've seen a lot of over the last 20 or 30 years, we've seen a lot of industry trends toward more fee-based models and less commission-based models, and so I think that there's a lot of this industry that's sort of moving in that direction.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I would agree with that 100%.